Good afternoon, everyone. The time is now 4:02 by my watch. Thank you for joining us once again. I will now call this meeting to order. Executive Director Brown, please read the notice of the public meeting.
Yes, absolutely. And just a note, Tony, and I don't think we're able to start our video here, but we'll just proceed unmuted with the beginning here. So for the notice of public meeting, Madam Chair, this is a regular meeting of the New Jersey Cannabis Regulatory Commission. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided in accordance with the Senator Byron M. Baer Open Public Meeting Act. The publication of the Commission's annual meeting schedule happened in 6 New Jersey print publications, including the Asbury Park Press, Bergen Record, Press of Atlantic City, Star Ledger, Courier Post, and Trenton Times. And then the updated meeting time was noticed in those same publications. And the notice of the updated time, it was switched from 6 p.m. to 4 p.m. to reflect the executive session, has been sent to the Secretary of State and posted on the public bulletin board outside of the Secretary's office. Information regarding the virtual nature of the meeting was posted in the publications and on the CRC website. In addition, notice of said meeting is being displayed on the website of the New Jersey Cannabis Regulatory Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Brown. Ms. Hogan, will you please do roll call?
Sure. Commissioner Barker,
Present.
Commissioner Del Cid Coso,
Present.
Commissioner Nash,
Present.
Vice Chair Delgado,
Present.
Chairwoman Waynu.
Present.
All members of the commission are present and we have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Hogan. Our first order of business for this evening is for the commission to go into executive session to discuss litigation and interagency contract matters. For members of the public who are watching and tuning in tonight, the executive sessions are discussions that, in accordance with the law, are not open to the public. However, we do not expect to take any formal action concerning the items discussed during today's executive session. We believe that the executive session should take about an hour and a half. Do I have a motion to go into executive session?
Madam Chair, I move that the commission go into executive session so that the commission may discuss litigation and interagency contract negotiations.
I second this.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion from the commissioners? Hearing none. Ms. Hogan, can you please call the vote? Oh, Ms. Hogan, you are on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Under consideration is the motion for the commission to go in executive session so that the commission may discuss litigation and interagency contract negotiations. Commissioner Barker. Commissioner Barker, I think you're on mute.
Aye.
Commissioner Del Cid Coso,
Yes.
Commissioner Nash,
Yes.
Vice Chair Delgado,
Yes.
Chairwoman Waynu.
Yes.
The motion passes. We will resume this meeting at the end of the executive session at approximately 5:30. Thank you all for your patience.
right, I think we are all back now. Thank you all for your patience. The executive session has now ended, and so we'll resume the public meeting. The next item on today's agenda is approving the minutes of the CRC public meeting that was held on June 1st, 2021. Also for consideration is the approval of the minutes from prior executive sessions. The minutes have been shared with the members of the commission prior to this meeting. And if there are no questions or discussion, I will ask for a motion to adopt the meeting minutes for the June 1st public meeting and the April 22nd and June 1st executive sessions. Do I hear a motion?
I think Sam was trying to speak, but he's on mute.
Am I on mute now? Yes.
Yes.
There you
Can
are.
you hear me? So
Yes.
moved, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you, Vice Chair Delgado. Do I have a second?
You're welcome.
Seconded.
Wonderful. Thank you, Commissioner Nash.
You're welcome.
Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of approving the meeting minutes for the June 1st public meeting and the April 22nd and June 1st executive sessions, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? All right, the ayes have it and the motion is carried. Next, we have the chair's remarks. I want to use this time to share a few updates with the members of the public. First, an update on the rules development that is in progress right now by the commission. As everyone knows, the commission's initial regulations are due by August 21st. Now, the public meetings really give the commissioners a chance to hear from and communicate directly with stakeholders, research experts, and the general public about their concerns and recommendations for the commission's work. And this really allows the commission to incorporate ideas shared by you all, the public, and put those ideas into the development of our initial rules. Although the CRC's public meetings, through the CRC's public meetings thus far, we've received comments from more than 350 people, and more than 2,200 people have attended our public meetings virtually. And even now we have close to 300 people watching right now. Now, the commission has already begun putting pen to paper to draft several rules. We are keenly aware that everyone is eager to get the regulations in place, as are each of us. But writing regulations is hefty work. And so it's important for us to get the content right, especially given these tight deadlines. Draft language might change. We may make revisions as we continue to hear from experts and from the public, especially on some of these important issues that come before us. But come August 21st, really, we commissioners want the rules to be clear and focused so that the people know what to expect as we move forward. And under the statute, once the initial rules are filed with the Office of Administrative Law, they will be in effect for up to 1 year. At that point, the CRC must adopt or amend the rules and can adopt or amend any subsequent regulations. And it's at that point that the CRC must go through the ordinary rulemaking process, which can take many months or upwards of it, or nearly a year in some instances. But due to the timelines that are dictated in statute, developing regulations on every single topic that's identified in the CREAM Act is simply not very practicable. So as such, the CRC will need to prioritize the initial rules on the subjects that are most critical to the beginning stages of establishing the regulated cannabis industry. And really, I want to emphasize that we are doing this prioritization for the benefit of the people and those who are wanting to enter the industry, and for all of the agencies and governments that are involved in establishing and helping us to regulate the industry. So given the immediate need to prioritize certain rules over others, the CRC's work to build out regulations will necessarily extend beyond August 21st. So if a particular subject matter isn't included in our initial rules, that does not mean that the CRC isn't going to consider or address that subject matter, nor does it mean that nor does it signify any intention to forego a comprehensive deliberation about that subject matter. We want to give due consideration to every issue that needs to be addressed, and that inherently requires us to have conversations with stakeholders and the impacted groups. So we want to make sure we do that correctly. Now, immediately after filing the initial rules, the CRC will commence the longer ordinary regulatory process that's needed to establish the permanent rules governing the regulated cannabis industry. Included in that ordinary process is a publicized draft of the proposed rules, a substantial public comment period soliciting your input on any part of those proposed rules, and a requirement that we, the agency, respond to the comments that we receive. I also want to share some positive news on expungements. We've recently gotten some updates from our colleagues in the Office of the Attorney General about how expungements are proceeding. The CREAM Act specifies that the state has to take on the task of identifying and expunging people's records for those who have been charged or convicted of certain marijuana related offenses in the past. And so I'm happy to share some of the progress that is being made from our sister agencies that are involved here. So the Department of Law and Public Safety has received $15 million for implementation and enhancements to handle the influx of expungements that are expected from clean slate petitions. Last year, the Division of State Police began hiring and onboarding new staff despite difficulties presented by the pandemic. So on the staffing front, the State Police Expungement Unit has gone from 11 members a year ago to now utilizing 85 people to help get this done, which is some tremendous progress. They've also automated the process for marijuana expungements, and that process will enable the records of those convicted of or charged with certain marijuana related offenses to be sealed immediately upon receipt of an eligibility list that the state police receive from the judiciary, from the courts. Earlier this month, on July 1st, the New Jersey Supreme Court ordered the automated dismissal, vacating, and expungement of certain eligible marijuana offenses. And pursuant to that order, the judiciary will be providing the Attorney General's office with a list of cases that are eligible for this expungement. And from there, the New Jersey State Police will be shared, the Attorney General will share those lists with the New Jersey State Police and with county and municipal prosecutors. and local law enforcement agencies. This is being done to make sure that we are really capturing equity. Expungements were a critical component of the campaign to legalize cannabis. It has been something that has been a priority for many folks in this administration, and the CRC is pleased to share these updates from our sister agencies at the Attorney General's office and the courts to make sure that we are doing the work that we as a collective are doing the work to make people whole. So that's all that I have for the chair's remarks. And next we have the executive director's report. So Director Brown, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you everyone for joining us on this evening. I wanted to touch on several different topics here. I'm going to give an update as I have on medical cannabis enrollment, and then talk about, I think, just to put an exclamation point on some of the things our chair said about the personal use cannabis regulations, provide an update on the 2019 request for applications, and then really frame out our topic du jour for public comment here, which is packaging, labeling, and advertising, by going over some of the things that are in current regulation and some of the things we're looking at in the statute that was signed into law earlier this year. So in medical cannabis, we've now reached 113,413 patients. We inched very close to 115,000 and then saw a little drop at the end of the month. We've in aggregate added 96,000 since 2018. That includes both those joining the rolls and those leaving, losing enrollment. We have over 4,000 caregivers, and we've now eclipsed 1,300 physicians. So enrollment continues to grow. In the aggregate, we're looking at about 2,500 new patients every month. We're actually seeing around in the range of 4,000 new patients signing up every month, and 1,000 to 2,000 losing eligibility at the same time. So enrollment continues to grow in medical here, even as we're on the precipice of doing some historic things when it comes to personal use cannabis. So moving on to personal use cannabis regulations, I wanted to share this infographic that Tony Ann Blake, our communications director, put together, because and it's on our website, which you can take a look at. I think it really outlines the process that our chair talked about in the process that we've put together here to really get us to August 21st and beyond. And that's, everything from listening to stakeholders, residents, potential business holders, collaborating, crafting these regulations, adopting, and then ultimately inviting businesses to apply. Back in our first public meeting, I shared a graph that had, at that time, I think the three critical pieces of infrastructure to launching this market, and that's staffing and infrastructure, regulations, and then licensing. And I assure you that all those are in process here. The regulations are our priority to get done, as our chair talked about, we're devoting a lot of resources to getting that done. I did want to move on to the 2019 request for applications, though, because where regulations and getting ready for licensing is 1A, the 2019 request for applications is 1AA. It is the highest priority project right now on our plates. Trust me, we want to get this done as quickly as we can. I can tell you that for those of you who are involved in the process, who are waiting for us to issue awards, scoring is still ongoing, but it's very close to wrapping up. I say that with all sincerity. I feel really good about where we are, and we're on the precipice of being able to start moving on these. So everyone's aware, following the close of scoring, there's an internal review and then ultimately an issuance of awards. And the way awards are going to be issued in the 2019 RFA they'll be voted on, essentially the proposed awards will be voted on at a public commission meeting. So unlike under Department of Health, where there were final agencies decisions issued, by the commissioner on a set date, and those, went out here, they will need to be voted on in a public meeting. So everybody will know what's going on. Everybody will know when it's going to happen. It will have to be announced in advance, just like any other public meeting. So, we hopefully have more stuff to share on that very soon. I know people are anxiously awaiting us to wrap that up. Trust me, I am right there with you. So that's the update on the 2019 request for applications. I wanted to move on now to packaging and labeling. So, we're in an okay spot when it comes to packaging and labeling right now in New Jersey in medical cannabis, but I say okay because there's really a lot more that needs to be done. When we look at our current rules, the one I wanted to highlight is that labeling shall be clear and truthful in all respects and shall not be false or misleading. That's a pretty broad statement. And if we look at our manufacturing standard, which is guidance that is issued under 864-10.6 and 10.7, it delves in a little deeper into what we mean there. Dispensable product or dispensable packages may not bear any resemblance to trademarks, can't have statement, artwork, or design that could reasonably mislead any person to believe that the dispensable product contains anything other than a finished medical marijuana product. Can't have, seal, flags, crests of arms, or other insignia that could mislead people, and can't have cartoons, color schemes, images, graphics, or features that might make the dispensable product or dispensable package attractive to children. I can tell you that I issued a directive to our investigators here about a month ago, asking them to undertake a review of all the packaging and labeling that's currently on the market in medical cannabis to make sure there's nothing that runs afoul of these prohibitions. We did have some labels that were proposed to us that we denied that would have run afoul of these. But this is the current standard. We also require labels that have every patient's name, individualized barcode so that we can track it back to the source should there be any issue with that potential product. And then a statement about the potency. So essentially the percentage of THC, the potency has to be on the product itself. But I think we have a lot more to do when it comes to packaging and labeling and presenting consumers with the proper information. And if you go to the next slide, the CREMA Act gives us really a lot to work with. And I'm not going to run through all of this, but really, it's helpful in crafting regulations when statute is very clear in terms of what the legislature intended and the authority is granted to us. And so, CREMA is very clear that we are to do extensive work when it comes to packaging and labeling and really focus, again, similar to current rule, focusing on those things that could be false, deceptive, or misleading, focus on preventing things that promote overconsumption, and focus again on things that depict a child or other person under the legal age, which by statute will be 21 from consuming cannabis items. Calls out characters, cartoon characters, toys, other similar objects. If you go to the child-resistant packaging, which we require currently, health and safety information, weight, product date, expiration date. This goes well beyond what we require now, but it is great guidance for us in crafting our regulations, whether the product requires refrigeration, the strain or type of cannabis, the growth method. Generally, most cannabis currently is either hydroponic or grown in dirt, but there are other growth methods on the market, so that will have to be specified. Warning labels that make sure people know that there's THC, that it's intoxicating, that they shouldn't drive after using them, and that there may be health risks associated with consuming that product. Next slide. Serving size again. So as you could see, the legislature has given us extensive guidance on what we need to do with packaging and labeling. This is an area that we're looking at very closely, and we have a number of invited speakers here that we wanted to go to first before we got to the broader public comment section, who can really get into, provide us with some guidance as we craft these rules and regulations. So we'll start.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Director Brown. Now, ordinarily on our next on our agenda would have been the consideration of the application from Harmony Foundation for permitting of an expanded cultivation site. That agenda item is being tabled for now. For anybody who was participating and waiting for that agenda item, please know that that item is no longer on today's agenda and it will be tabled. So we will move on to next item on the agenda, which is public comments. So as we move to the public comment portion for today, I want to remind and encourage everyone to submit written comments during or after this meeting through the CRC's website, nj.gov/cannabis/meetings. Again, that's nj.gov/cannabis/meetings. On that page, you'll find below the agenda for today, you'll find a link for submitting your comments. Comments submitted to the website are shared with the commissioners, and they will be made public along with the meeting's minutes. The deadline for submitting written comments for today is the end of day tomorrow, July 14th. So again, deadline for submitting your written comments to the commission is tomorrow, at the end of day tomorrow, July 14th. Now today we have some invited speakers as well as members of the general public to share their thoughts, ideas, and concerns with the CRC on the following topics: packaging and labeling of cannabis and cannabis products, and advertising of cannabis and cannabis businesses. So a few housekeeping items before we begin. As always, we'll hear from our invited speakers first, followed by those individuals who have signed up to speak. And those individuals will be called in the order that they registered. Now, as indicated on our website, members of the public will be limited to 3 minutes. If you are present with a group, we ask that the group identify one speaker to represent the entire group. Please be respectful and concise during your comments. At present, we have about 70 or so individuals who had signed up to speak. We will call out the names of the speakers 3 at a time. When it's your turn to speak, you'll be asked to unmute yourself. If you're dialing in on a phone, you will have to press *6 to unmute yourself when told to do so. So we do have some folks joining us today by phone. If you are signed up to speak, you will have to unmute yourself by pressing *6 when told to do so. Please note that in order for our staff to unmute the correct individuals who are registered to speak, your full name or phone number that appears on the Zoom platform must match the name or number that you used to register. We will not be able to identify you as a speaker if your name or phone number does not match what you used to sign up. If you need to change your name, go to the participants list within Zoom. If you hover above your own name, you'll see a more button, hit more, and then click rename. So now, Director Brown, would you please call our guest speakers?
Yes, absolutely. So we're going to start with our invited speakers here. And our first speaker is Dr. David Nathan from Doctors for Cannabis Regulation. And so Tony N, if you could find Dr. Nathan, that would be great. And then Dr. Nathan, we have your slides, which we'll queue up. You'll just have to give us the sort of the go ahead on how to move those forward.
Can you guys hear and or see me?
There you are. Yes. Okay, great.
Great. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, honorable members of the New Jersey CRC. My name is Dr. David Nathan. I am a board certified psychiatrist, and for the past 23 years, I've maintained a private practice in Princeton, New Jersey, where I live with my wife and our 2 children. I'm a clinical associate professor at the Rutgers Robert Wood Johnson Medical School and a distinguished fellow of the American Psychiatric Association. I'm a member of the standards organization ASTM's Committee D37 on Cannabis, and I believe you're going to hear from one of the representatives of that organization later. I'm also the founder of Doctors for Cannabis Regulation, or DFCR. With a prestigious roster of physicians, including former Surgeon General Joycelyn Elders and integrative medicine pioneer Andrew Weil, DFCR has members around the world and in nearly every US state and territory. And as many of you know, DFCR was a spinoff of the broad coalition of individuals and organizations that comprise New Jersey United for Marijuana Reform, of which I was a very proud founding member back in 2014. DFCR's platform of regulation promotes a core set of principles based on public health and social justice. One key priority is the labeling of cannabis products. Proper labeling is the linchpin for successful evidence-based cannabis regulation, as it represents the final endpoint of numerous regulatory processes. I've closely studied the labeling standards of other states and nations. Some are better than others, but none have really adequately addressed the needs of consumers and the public in any kind of consistent way. For this reason, DFCR physicians, including myself, have developed a new labeling paradigm for use in legalized states and eventually at the federal level. Today, I'm going to speak in broad strokes about the key components of a universal cannabis information label, and I will propose New Jersey's adoption of the universal cannabis product symbol. The information label must serve the needs of medical cannabis patients, adult consumers, and non-consumers alike. It should include all product information one would expect, including product form, weight, batch information, expiration date, and cannabinoid and terpene profiles. It should also include the serving size and ingredients for applicable product forms, which may be more forms than we think. I'm happy to discuss that further. So we further propose the use of a QR code that can not only validate the authenticity of a regulated product and link to more detailed information about cannabis use, it can also talk about misuse, safety testing, and other factors beyond what can fit onto a product package. And finally, the new package label should include a standardized, evidence-based, and concise set of warnings that touch upon the essential health issues for specific populations and with particular product forms. The warning statements developed by DFCR have many of the same warnings in New Jersey's enabling legislation for cannabis legalization, but my colleagues and I believe that the universal cannabis information label we developed is a very tight and concise evidence-based standard that New Jersey would be wise to follow. So if we could go back to that first slide, please. There we go. So now I'm going to talk about the symbol. After reviewing symbols currently in use in US states and Canada, and you can see the sort of motley crew here, to identify cannabis products, all either manifest design problems or signal unintended messages about cannabis use. And slide 2, please. That's why I propose that New Jersey adopt the universal cannabis product symbol, a novel design that has been unanimously approved by the Board of Directors of Doctors for Cannabis Regulation and the ASTM working group under Committee D37, developing a universal cannabis symbol with a vote by the full membership pending.
Hey, Dr. Nathan, just one minute warning.
Great, thanks. This is a simple design incorporating a cannabis leaf, the graphic element most associated with cannabis, into the familiar internationally recognized caution sign in yellow and black, creating an instantly recognizable symbol for all cannabis product packages. And as you can see, the symbol has well-separated leaflets that remain clear at greatly reduced dimensions. The absence of text inside the triangle avoids linguistic ambiguity and the need for future changes in the symbol as cannabis science and policy develops. We expect that jurisdictions around the world will authorize use of the symbol, and we'd like to start here in the symbol's home state of New Jersey. That is why I and my co-designer, our son Eli Nathan, have chosen to offer the symbol in perpetuity in multiple file formats for public use worldwide, royalty-free and at no cost. Couple more slides. Here you see the dimensions of the symbol, which conform to all current ISO, ANSI, and ASTM standards for warning triangles. Next slide, please. Here you see the symbol as it would, oh, actually the last slide was, here you would see the symbol as it would appear on a product box and vape pen cartridge. Next. These labeling standards, this is the last slide, labeling standards are designed to meet the needs of regulators, cannabis businesses, medical professionals, and consumers. Stakeholders in all four groups have described them as simultaneously compact, comprehensive, and clear. I'm excited by the opportunity before us to design public health-minded, evidence-based cannabis regulations from basic principles. I would be honored for New Jersey to become the first state in the nation to follow these labeling standards. If the CRC adopts DFCR's and ASTM's labeling standards, I can assure you that New Jersey cannabis products will serve as the gold standard for labeling, not just in the United States, but around the world. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your time and attention, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Nathan. Are there any questions for Dr. Nathan? Okay, great. Thank you again, Dr. Nathan, for your time this evening. Director Brown, can you please move to our next invited guest speaker?
Yes, next we have Dr. Diane Calello from the New Jersey Poison Control Center. Dr. Calello, I see you, you should be moving over to a panelist right now, and Tony N should be queuing up your slides. Hi, Diane.
Hi, Jeff. Thank you. Can you hear me and see me?
Yes, yes.
Great. Well, while we wait for the slides to come up, I guess I'll get started in the interest of time. Thank you to the Commission and Madam Chair for inviting the New Jersey Poison Center to this really important discussion about packaging, labeling, and advertising. I'm Dr. Diane Calello. I'm a pediatrician and a toxicologist and a pediatric emergency medicine provider. And I am glad to be discussing this. So first, next slide, I have nothing to disclose, no commercial conflicts of interest. And next slide, the New Jersey Poison Center is the state's only poison center. We are a 24/7 hotline staffed by healthcare professionals. In the last year, we have also become the New Jersey Coronavirus Hotline. So you can imagine our operation is pretty busy. But next slide, in the last 3 years, the New Jersey Poison Center has seen about a 600% increase in pediatric edible cannabis exposures. And my remarks are going to focus primarily on this, because although adult cannabis toxicity cases do occur in concert with enhanced cannabis access, pediatric exposures can be much more consequential, and children can end up in the hospital with respiratory arrest or seizures. And so I don't put this up so much to scare people as to say, let's talk about how to prevent this. Next slide. New Jersey is not alone in this. Other states that have increased cannabis access or cannabis law liberalization have seen an increase in unintentional pediatric exposure calls. And this is a study from Colorado. So first, let's think about packaging. Next slide. So how can packaging optimize safety? Primarily, this is through what I'm already glad to see is partly present in the legislation, which is child-resistant closures, resealable child-resistant closures, opaque packaging, and avoiding candy lookalikes. So a child-resistant closure is stipulated in the Poison Prevention Packaging Act of 1970. It's a two-mechanism closure that keeps about 80% of children out of a bottle of something toxic for a period of several minutes. Initially, it included acetaminophen and aspirin and household chemicals, but has now been expanded to include things like nicotine liquid and a lot of other things. And that has drastically reduced the incidence of poisoning. In addition to that, packaging, which is opaque, it is not enticing to young children and does not look like a popular candy, is really essential. So next slide, here's an image of a really bad example that we took from a patient that we saw at University Hospital in Newark, a young child who got into this package, which you can see Looks like everybody's favorite candy, has a tear open top, which maybe is child resistant the first time it's opened, but once it's opened, it certainly isn't. It contains some tiny warning labels. It says medicated, but it's a little hard to read. And so this is an example of exactly what we shouldn't be doing. And then next slide is another example also from one of our patients, a popular candy. It says medicated, but it's hard to see. And it has, a child resistant closure that is pretty flimsy. Next slide. So a good child resistant closure is what you can see on the left. It's a pinch and zip open and close. It can be resealed. Hopefully people remember to reseal it. The best option is the unit dose child resistant closure, which you can see is around each of these individual pieces of cheese. That provides some passive protection for children, even if the adult consumer doesn't remember to re-engage the child resistant closure. So I encourage the commission to consider both of these levels of protection. Next slide. And then candy lookalikes, I think, are common sense. I'm glad to see they're already making their way into the legislation. These were seized from Colorado. I think it's common sense that anything that looks like candy or favorite food is a particular setup for a pediatric poisoning, because kids are going to really be attracted to that. And so both Colorado and Oregon and other states have very clear language that I've included in my written statement about how to avoid products that look like popular candy, that say candy, that are colorful and all kinds of variety of features that make them appear enticing, to keep those out of the market, out of the hands of children. Next slide. So moving to labeling. I appreciate Dr. Nathan's comments about all of the different ways that we can optimally label. Warning labels should be large. They should be placed on the front of the package, have clear, direct, and accurate messages about specific health effects, should be simply worded, should be in color, and understandable to people with all levels of literacy, and should be rotated regularly to avoid overexposure or fatigue. Other considerations include putting the poison center number on the label in case of an accidental exposure, and saying not for children. So it's clear, and not, so it's clear who the target population is. Next slide. This is actually a public safety announcement, but I also think is worth thinking about to discourage over consumption by adults of edibles, kind of dose stacking, waiting for them to take effect. But next slide, here are some examples that you've already seen of some warning labels in states, and Dr. Nathan has already covered this in detail. So I'll just move on to the final topic, which is advertising. I think we can take a page from tobacco restrictions on advertising to ensure that adverts reach the target consumer and don't have overlap with populations we do not want it to reach, like adolescents and young children. So that includes not including people in advertising that may appear to be under the age of 21, not using cartoon characters, much of what Executive Director Brown has already said, not having free product samples, gifts for proof of purchase, or pop-up ads on sites that are very popular with children. So this is a bit of a whirlwind tour, but I thank you for your time and attention. I've submitted more details in my written comments, and here's how to reach me. And I'll take any questions, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Calello. Any questions from our commissioners for Dr. Calello at this time? Seeing none, Dr. Calello, thank you so much for your time and lending your expertise.
Thank you.
Director Brown, can you please proceed to the next invited guest?
Yes, so next invited guest is Nina Parks. Nina Parks is on the San Francisco Cannabis Oversight Committee and is also founder of the Original Equity Group. And she's going to talk to us about packaging, labeling, advertising considerations from an equity perspective. So welcome, Ms. Parks.
Thank you all for having me. This is an amazing opportunity to be able to talk to a regulatory commission at the onset of coming up with your regulatory system in regards to packaging and labeling. And much of what the doctors have presented on are super relevant, definitely needing to think about edible consumption for for youth, right? So like the child safety on those ones, crucial, right? Just to make sure that we are doing our due diligence. And then also in regards to potentially adding that QR code as a means of being able to communicate a lot of the information about, what's like, what kind of product that they, like a consumer has in front of them. We are finding in regards to social equity and, cannabis equity, right, in the form of our equity programs, is the things that we need to consider is like, how much does packaging actually cost our equity applicants, right? So we're in trying to mitigate the barriers to entry into the legal market. Is like, how can we help our constituents be able to figure out, like how to have a solid budget, you know what I mean? So things that were nightmares for California is that we had labeling requirements that changed like 4 times, which led to these high level extinction events for a lot of small operators, because someone could have spent $20,000 on packaging. They changed 2 labeling requirements, and all of those packages are almost like unusable, and then it's either that or they have to add extra stickers, which is like 10 cents a touch point, which ends up adding up to a lot for people that have very small budgets. So as regulators, really taking some time to think about how you're going to do the rollout, and then how you would do any revamps, as time goes on, is super crucial in creating a landscape that isn't hostile to folks with very small budgets. So small businesses, which are our equity applicants, for the most part. There will be some individuals that have had partnerships with larger corporations that could probably eat the cost, but for folks that we're trying to create a landscape for, it might be like, it might make or break their business moving forward. Other things to consider, like, I know that there was a lot on the opaque packaging, but it seems like Washington State has allowed for people to view what their product looks like. So having windows that will allow people to shop. And this also goes for like consumer education about the product, right? So considering how much a lot of the product costs, if it is in the opaque packaging and maybe has been sitting on the shelf for quite some time, they end up paying $60 and then get something that is like completely like browned and not worth their time. So as far as also looking out for the consumer and how much this medicine costs, because there's a lot of people that still use it for medicinal reasons. The way that we try to look at everything in San Francisco, since we were a compassion city, is that all use is medicinal use, right? So like if we can figure out how to continue to treat it that way, we can also help to mitigate adult consumption, right? If we are understanding that people are coming into using cannabis because they are self-medicating off of something, right? Which is a larger conversation that we can have that doesn't necessarily have to do with labeling. In regards to helping to identify equity products, because this is something that we're starting to find in California. An organization that I helped to co-found called the Original Equity Group filed with the USPTO for an equity trade certification, which is finding its way on through our pilot program. And now we're starting to move it forward. We have 14 products that are at market, which has actually helped to get equity products onto people's shelves, because we find that not a lot of people are going to do the research, plus like putting your verification number on a package is kind of tacky, and it doesn't really work for labeling, design labeling and all of those other things. It just like you would find fair trade, just as well as you would find organic products, having like a service mark or a certification mark that can help to identify equity products could really help with the marketplace, as well as to help consumers identify brands that they would like to support that are from their communities. So that is all I have for you guys today. Is there any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Parks. Thank you very much for your time. Any questions from the commissioners? Hearing none, thank you again. We welcome your expertise from other jurisdictions. And so thank you for sharing your insights on this unique aspect of an issue. Director Brown, our next speaker.
Yes, next we have our last invited speaker, which is Mr. Bob Morgan from ASTM. He's in his Robert Morgan USA on the attendee list. So Robert, you should be good to go. And Tony, and we'll get your slides up here.
Thank you so much. While we're getting the slides up, but let me take this opportunity, Madam Chair and distinguished commissioners, to express my gratitude for the opportunity to address this group and share some of the information that's taking place at ASTM International as it relates to cannabis. And I don't see a slides up there.
Yeah, we'll get them.
Okay.
Give us a second. There we go. And Tony, just switch the screens because it's showing the presenter view again, and then you'll be good to go.
Okay, great.
There we go. Great.
So thank you so much. So ASTM International is a not-for-profit, non-governmental organization that develops voluntary consensus standards that focus on product performance, quality, and safety. ASTM has been around for nearly 125 years and has 148 technical committees that have developed standards on topics such as PPE masks, aviation fuel, medical devices, and consumer products. Technical committees work to achieve consensus on marketplace relevant standards. Many of these standards are referenced around the globe to facilitate trade. Next slide, please. ASTM standards are developed voluntarily and used voluntarily. They become mandatory when cited in a contract or referenced by law. The National Technology Transfer Act instructs federal agencies to consider consensus-based organizations like ASTM for their standards needs. Next slide, please. In 2017, a group of cannabis industry stakeholders voted to form Committee D37 on cannabis. Today, Committee D37 has over 1,000 members from 30 countries working to create legitimacy for the cannabis industry by developing consensus-based standards. You'll note that the subcommittee structure reflects a very broad scope of topics being discussed and addressed by the stakeholders. Next slide, please. Thus far, ASTM Committee D37 has published 25 full consensus standards addressing topics such as quality management systems, sanitation, product recall, cybersecurity, and packaging and labeling, to name a few. Next slide, please. In development are a variety of projects addressing elemental contamination, potency, and many other topics, including a universal symbol for products containing THC, which Dr. Nathan has been volunteering his time to collaborate with other industry stakeholders. I know that you have a particular interest in the packaging and labeling, and while we do have an approved standard on this topic, the subcommittee feels that it is necessary to have a separate standard, one each for packaging and one each for labeling, and the subcommittee is actively working on developing standards on this topic. This concludes my comments, and I thank you so much for your time this afternoon, and please let me know if I can answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Morgan. Any questions from the commissioners? Hearing none, we also invite you to share any written comments or testimony that you may have, so that that can be shared with the commissioners as well. So thank you again. I believe that concludes our invited speakers, and so now we are going to members of the public who had registered to speak. Director Brown, is that correct?
That is correct. So thank you to our invited speakers. Really appreciate you taking the time to speak to the commission here. Again, you can submit comments in writing as well. Some of you have already done that. We'll be sure to circulate that with the commissioners. And now I'm going to turn it over to Tony Ann Blake to call out the public commenters. And as it says, you know, it's 3 minutes per comment, and I'll be doing my best to keep time here. So just try to keep it under the limit here, because we do have a lot of people signed up to speak.
Good afternoon, everyone. Just a reminder that I'm looking for the name that is registered. So please change your name as you registered to the one that's on your screen. I will call 5 names at a time. Please raise your hands so that I can see you at the top of the attendee list. We will start now with the first 5 will be Joshua Perez, David Carr, Kevin C. Underwater, Suzanne Shariato, and Gaetano Lardieri. Again, the names are Joshua Perez, David H. Carr, Kevin C. Underwater, Susan Schiaretto, Gaetano Lardieri. And I will start with Suzanne. Suzanne,
Hello.
unmute yourself and speak. There you go.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for allowing me to speak, and I will try to be as brief as possible. We are literally living in the best of times and the worst of times, which means utter chaos. Our citizens overwhelmingly voted in favor of legalization, including over 2/3 of my town of Clementon in an hour, actually in half an hour. I have to convince my town council the benefits of opting in to allow cannabis businesses in our town when all of us are patiently awaiting any crumbs to come out of your office regarding pretty much everything. And I'll explain. I want you to listen to this comment regarding their decision to opt out before the vote tonight, which was announced this morning. This comment comes from Chris Hammond, Borough of Clementon, New Jersey, Borough Council. And this was a public comment made a short time ago. No one is attempting to ban anything. Here is the timeline. The vote is due before any complete information is formulated and released to us, as previously stated. If on the due date, Clementon opts in, we are locked in for 5 years. So if once the due date has passed, the state of New Jersey regulations say that we must pay $2 million a year via a certified check that is walked to Trenton from Clementon on foot, and every dispensary has to have 1,700 live chickens on the roof at all times or face a fine. We must do that for 5 years. However, if Clementon opts out on the due date, and the next day information comes out that says that we can proceed in the way we see fit and take 10% of the profit, we can opt in that day and lose nothing because there has not been a large scale business proposal. Likely micro licenses will be issued first, yet those mandate that 51% of employees must come from the municipality. End of quote. This is the circus-like atmosphere of absurdity being offered up by such like-minded characters running our towns all over the state. Why are you allowing this to happen to 61% of the population who already made their wishes known? This person honestly believes passionately what he's saying, making up ridiculous scenarios like chickens on our roofs. You're allowing it by not at least making a statement that gives a little more clarity about what opting in will look like, or give them more time, which doesn't seem possible, but even giving the people more time to prepare to educate each other on the subject.
Susan, About 15, 20 seconds here.
Okay. Lastly, but just as important, is the recent experience of frustration that I had in the hospital when I was admitted for surgery and given opioids instead of my medication. And I wasn't given a choice. And I believe that Jeff's law is an important piece of legislation that also needs to be considered by the committee. And I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Guerrero. Thank you for your time and your comment this evening. Next speaker, Ms. Blake.
I'm not seeing Joshua Perez, David H. Carr, Kevin Oldenwalder, or Gaetano Lardieri. So I will be moving on to the next five. The next five, Adrian R. Adams Jr., Charles Johnson, Lincoln Adam Grattan, Nancy Erica Smith Esquire, and Louis Urieta. Again, Adrian R. Adams Jr., Charles Johnson, Lincoln Adam Grattan, Nancy Erica Smith Esquire, and Louis Urieta. Please raise your hands so I can see you. The first up will be Charles Johnson.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. All right, well, good evening, commissioners, and thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. Apologize if I'm a little bit off topic, but my name is Charles Johnson. I'm an attorney by trade, a member of the New Jersey Cannabis Association, and a proud member of the NAACP, and co-founder of CEO of Leaf Spots, an African-American owned cannabis transportation service and logistics software company in New Jersey. At Leaf Spots, our mission is simple. It's to provide a unique blend of technology, fulfillment logistics, and general brand support that enables our self-service model to be as successful as possible for our manufacturing brands and retail partners. For the sake of time, I've compiled a few questions for the commission to take into consideration while finalizing the adult use market guidelines. My first question is to ensure that the cultivator and manufacturing classes do not find loopholes and the legislation language. Will the CRC create a robust plan, including details of what is the determined threshold amount, meaning of transportation of cannabis products in bulk under the Class 4 definition to ensure Class 4 license holders can operate effectively in a fair market? My second question is, with the majority of discussion pertaining to a minority participation in micro business licenses, will the CRC ensure that there are minority-owned businesses equally reflected in the awarding of regular annual Class 4 licenses? The reason why I ask this is because with less than 2% of companies owned by African Americans in the US, according to Leafly's most recent jobs report, there are Black businesses that aspire to go for regular annual Class 4 licenses that aren't being taken into consideration when it comes to the minority participation conversations. My third question is a two-part question. First part is regarding the minority ownership threshold of 51%. How will that apply to businesses that have minority co-founders that own both 50% each? The second part is, will co-founders be calculated at a combined ownership interest out of at least 51% if they obtain investors whom hold both a financial and ownership interest? And my final question is regarding significantly involved persons and decision-making authority in the definition section of the legislation. Will the CRC define board seats as meeting the decision-making authority criteria legislatively defined? My last thing I will say is that I really hope that the CRC will make strict guidelines regarding the implementation and reporting of social equity programs by businesses to ensure that the cannabis industry is doing its part to rebuild communities impacted by the war on drugs. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak, and I will also submit these questions in writing for further review if needed.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Yes, you will have up until tomorrow, end of day tomorrow, to submit written comments or written testimony to be shared with the commissioners. Ms. Blake?
Madam Chairwoman, I would just add, if Esquire Johnson could submit those comments to the commission.
Yes, anyone can submit those written comments to us.
The next speaker up is Adam Grattan. I will unmute you, allow you to speak, and you can unmute yourself and go ahead, Mr. Grattan.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, excellent. Hi, my name is Lincoln Grattan. I'm a medical patient. I have been a medical patient for the last 3 years. I only have one gripe with the system. I went to the dispensary. It was about over an hour away. I was provided a ride as I do not have transportation at the time. And I was turned away, not subsequently because my medical card was invalid, but because my state issue ID was valid. As you know, the DMV has been absolutely hectic with, organizing and issuing licenses and renewals as well. So I wasn't able to purchase my medication at that said dispensary. I had to drive about another hour away to another dispensary where I was able to purchase medication, which is kind of a problem. Not a lot of people have the luck that I do have with friends to at least get me to the place that I need to be. So I feel like, as a person who's over the age of 21, if I use my driver's license to purchase alcohol, why can't I use my medical license that says I'm a registered medical patient to purchase said cannabis? We need to figure out a simpler way in order to say, this is okay. You can just use your medical license to grab your cannabis. As an African-American male, I have been affected by the war on drugs. I have an extensive record for simple possession. I would like to participate in the cannabis industry, but I do not have access to the $1 million capital that is needed in order to start a business, even a small business like a smoke lounge, which is what I want to be able to do. There is no access to capital. There is no organization or a way to at least talk amongst a group of people and at least organize in an orderly fashion to at least obtain my goal. I was wondering if there is a way for the CRC to come up with a comprehensive plan to at least let people who are in my demographic that don't have the type of access to capital to be able to have that type of access to at least be a part of the industry, especially for minority groups. We all know minorities make less money than other groups. And there just needs to be a more comprehensive way for everybody to have total access. Thank you for your time. I really do appreciate, and I will submit everything in writing as well.
Mr. Grattan, just in regards to the barrier you faced at the dispensary, if that happens to you again, please call our customer service unit at 609-292-0424. That is it's on our website, but anyway, we want to make sure patients are able to access their medicine. So feel free for any patient to call our customer service unit for help if you need it. And you can also, submit in your comments in writing. If you want to submit details on which dispensary that was, we'd be happy to look into it for you.
Yes, of course, I definitely will. Absolutely. Thank you very much for listening.
And Adam, I would suggest you call before you go to the dispensary.
I'm not seeing Adrian Adams, Nancy Erica Smith, or Louis Urieta. So I'll be moving on to the next 5. Mark Dinglestead, Henry Silcock, Trisha Rivera, Curtis Howard, Matthew Boyle. Those are the next 5. Mark Dinglestead, Henry Silcock, Trisha Rivera, Curtis Howard, and Matthew Boyle. The first up will be Mark Dinglestead. I will invite you to speak, and then you can unmute yourself.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the CRC. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Mark Dinglestead, and I've been a medical marijuana patient since June of 2018. At the time, I was taking 2 opioid pain pills and 8 other medications. 3 years later, my only medication is cannabis. I was able to put everything else aside. Hasn't always been easy. One of the things that I used to do before picking up some flower is to view the terpene profiles listed on the ATC websites. I'm sure most of you know what the terpene is. It's an element of the plant. It comes in the glands. They produce the cannabinoids like THC and CBD, and it gives the strains a distinctive flavor, but also provides an entourage effect when interacting with the other cannabinoids. Have benefits like relaxation, stress relief. Others might have a more uplifting and energetic effect. By viewing a strain profile, a patient has a better idea of what particular effects a strain might have. The problem is the ATCs no longer publish terpene profiles on their sites, and it makes choosing a right strain difficult. When asked about the missing profiles, the ATCs always just put it on the state, up to state rules. But strains are often unavailable, discontinued, or limited quantities. If my go-to strain is out of stock, I have to choose another strain, maybe another dispensary. There's no information out there for me to make an informed decision on my medication. Just to give you one example of how the information is crazy, Verano's East Coast Sour Diesel strain is available in most of the dispensaries in the state. But an hour ago, I checked to see how it's described. One goes, East Coast Sour Diesel is an active, motivating, deceptively potent. THC levels reaching 20, not ideal for beginners. Another dispensary describes the same brand and strain as East Coast Sour Diesel Cannabis strain, sometimes known simply as ECSD. It's a 70-30 sativa with relatively moderate THC level. So which is it, a moderate or a potent strain? Another ATC website simply offers genetics. It's a sour diesel cross with RFK skunk and a cross with Hawaiian Northern Lights. How is this helpful for a patient trying to make a decision on his medication? More importantly, how come the information is not the same across all of the ATCs? Now, keep in mind, it's the same brand, the same strain, a different description. I could go to the state strain library for specific information, but the strain library is hard to use and offers little value. The only info that may be helpful to patients are the 8 cannabinoids that are listed in these reports. No terpenes are listed as all. In order to access these reports, you have to leave the ATC website, log into the state website, then to the strain library. The strains are often not listed by strain name, rather by identifier.
Mr. Dingelstead, just about 15 seconds here. Thank you.
All right. Please update the strain library to indicate cannabinoids and terpenes, and get the ATCs, please, to put the terpenes on their website so we can make a better decision regarding our medication. Thank you, and I welcome any questions or comments.
Thank you, Mr. Dingelstead. Ms. Blake?
I'm looking for Henry Silcock, Tricia Rivera, Curtis Howard, Matthew Boyle. Are any of those people present? No. Next 5, Paul Josephson.
Tony, and I see Henry and Tricia seem to have just raised their hands here.
Oh, yes, great. Okay, Henry Silcock will go first. Mr. Silcock, just unmute yourself and you can go.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Madam Chairman and commissioners. My name is Henry Silcock. My professional background is in the defense industry, and I now run a small high-tech consultancy in Somerset County, New Jersey. I'd like to take a few minutes to address an important topic which applies to all segments of the cannabis industry and to all potential licensees, and that is cybersecurity. So I'd like to talk first about the risks involved and some of the special considerations in the cannabis industry, which can make cybersecurity a challenging proposition. And then I'd like to talk about some ways of mitigating those risks and some things that I think the state can do to mitigate the risks, to make the industry more secure, and at the same time to help the social equity participants. So first, the risks involved. There are some special circumstances in the cannabis industry. First, it's a high value target. And when I say value here, I mean data. There's a lot of valuable data around that a lot of people would like to get access to for a lot of reasons. The regulatory reporting requirements are expensive to implement the track and trace system. The software tools available to industry participants are complex, difficult to maintain. There are many vendors, many variants, frequent changes to the software, and some vendors struggle with maintaining many different variants of their software. When I have time, I usually talk about cybersecurity and start with some scary stories, of which there are many in the cannabis industry, but I'll just say there have been significant outages both in California and in Colorado this year. And finally, in the New Jersey context, there will be less vertical integration in the market. There will be many new participants, such as the micro licensees. And so, for example, track and trace will now require collecting and correlating data from many more places. So these are some of the circumstances that make it.
Mr. Silcock, 30 seconds, please.
Thank you. More broadly, you can't separate cybersecurity from physical security and from business continuity in the era of ransomware. So I have some suggestions as to how the state might be able to help micro licensees with cybersecurity and with track and trace. And I have submitted a summary of my comments for your review. I'll be happy to answer questions or to follow up later. Thank you very much again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Silcock. As we move to the next set of speakers, I just want to remind everyone to make sure that your name or your phone number appears on the Zoom platform and reflects the name or phone number that you use to register to speak. We will not be able to unmute or identify people who whose name does not match. There are more than 300 individuals joining us today, so we just simply cannot play a guessing game here. So if you need to check and see what your name appears on the Zoom platform, open up the participants list. At the top of the attendees tab should be you. Just hover over your name. You should see a more button. Click on the more button and then click rename to make sure that your name is accurate. Otherwise, we will not be able to identify people who have registered to speak. And so we want to make sure that we are hearing from folks who have properly taken the steps needed to register. So please, please, please verify that your name is accurate and it is properly reflected. It should be your first and last name. Thank you. Ms. Blake, please continue with the speakers.
I'm going to do a recall of Tricia Rivera, Curtis Howard, and Matthew Boyle. There is a Tricia R raised. I'm going to allow that person to talk, but as the chair said, I will not be able to do that if I don't clearly see who it is. Ms. Rivera, if that is you, you can go ahead and
Yes, that is me. I apologize. I'll have to change that on my Zoom. I appreciate you allowing me to speak. I'm in a municipality right now that's voting tomorrow whether to opt in or opt out. And I'm really curious about what the manner of business means to the CRC. I know they can opt in, opt out as far as the services, location, times of operation, manner. I'm curious what falls into the manner of business. In other words, can they say, we would like it only to be micro licenses, or we would like odor control, or is that a reach for the municipality at this point to do? I mean, they'll probably have to readdress it after you guys come out with full regulations anyway. Would it hurt to do things like that? And would it be allowable in the eyes of the CRC?
Thank you, Ms. Rivera. Is that
It's
all that you wanted to share? You
Well,
just
yeah, and
raised that question.
I'm totally pro, and I'm all for this. I'm glad that this is happening, and you know, and also for social justice reasons also. But yeah, that's really my question. I really have a question for you guys, because it's tomorrow where the municipality is voting, and I'd like to know what boundaries they can vote under, if there's any kind of boundaries at all, or they just have this opt-in, opt-out.
So just because your question is a question of fact, I'll just note that the statute, as you identified, does have some language around municipal authorities here. Now, we, as a regulatory agency, we cannot interpret the law for the municipalities or give legal advice on what does or does not fall within the municipality's authority. So unfortunately, we wouldn't be able to provide an answer in that respect.
Okay.
But the law does have, the statute does have some pretty broad
As far as the manner of business?
Yes, and I would encourage you to speak with your municipal officials to get a better understanding of what they view as the manner of business that they may be seeking to
So,
regulate.
okay, you're leaving that up to the municipality to decide the manner then, is that what you're saying?
I'm saying we can't interpret the statute for them. And so I would just encourage you to speak with your municipal officials to get a better understanding.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms.
you.
Rivera. Ms. Blake?
Next 5 up, Paul Josephson, Justin Pyatt, Brady Carter, Hader Rizvi, and Nicholas Cody. Hader Rizvi is already up. I will allow you to speak, and you'll unmute and go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, I'm going for a micro retail license. That's ultimately my goal with the way the law was written. And I want to talk about some of the barriers that I have already faced trying to enter this industry as a social equity applicant. It costs about $7,000 just to open up a bank account. It can cost up to $25,000 to $30,000 to hire a lobbyist, since we're not really politically connected and we don't have a lot of capital. It does create a lot of barriers in terms of getting any type of municipal approval, since it seems like, at least with my current research and everything that I've been trying to do, a lot of people that are gaining more access to municipal leaders have some sort of political connection, or they have a lot of capital and investments backing them up. It costs about $15,000 upwards towards $100,000 just to hire an application writer to make sure that we actually have an application that's going to be adequate enough to be rewarded a license. You know, this is for an application that hasn't even, regulations for that haven't even come out yet. And there's just a number of other legal fees, accounting fees that just keep on piling up. And it is becoming very, very challenging for someone like myself. And I I actually make a six-figure income, and I grew up very as an immigrant minority. I went through the Jersey City public school system, and I was on welfare when I was a child. I didn't speak English, so I worked hard to be where I am. And even with my educational background, I have a doctorate level degree as a physical therapist. I treat patients with neurological deficits and neurodegenerative diseases who have explored cannabis as an alternative medicine for them. And even with my background, I am really struggling to navigate through this process. It's not easy to even when the regulations haven't really come out yet. It just really has been very stressful in terms of which direction to go to and which municipality is going to take me, and having emails and phone calls ignored, and getting mixed messages of who's doing what and what's available, and a lot of finger pointing back and forth. We don't have enough guidelines from the state, or the deadline is approaching too soon, or we don't want anything cannabis related in our township. It's just a myriad of things that are really just standing in the way. And I just want to inform you that the obstacles are real, and they're there right now, and it's really hard to cross over those obstacles. And one suggestion that I guess I can present to the CRC is, in order to really improve access for the minority and the social equity applicant to get into the industry, is you can take a poll of all the townships that are agreeing to have some whatever sort of license they want, whether it's retail, manufacturing, and you can have a pool of that. And when the applications do come out and we apply, you can basically assign each license that you want to reward, and you can assign them whatever township that they can go into. And in the application, we can write down.
So Risby, about 10 seconds here.
So in the application, we can write down what township we prefer to be in, and then you can make that decision to just assign it to us. Also, real estate has been very difficult. It's hard to really hold a position and burn so much capital just to wait until the CRC makes a decision on to who the license is going to go to. And that's also another huge challenge for social equity applicants. And I hope that you do take that all into consideration when you are writing up those regulations. Thank you for your time. I didn't expect to be able to speak, but I really am appreciative that I had the opportunity to do so. Thank you.
Mr. Risby.
Is Nicholas Cody. Unmute yourself, Mr. Cody, and you'll be able to.
Hey, just a quick, sorry, Mr. Cody, before you get started, just a quick note for anybody who's having trouble renaming themselves. We need to be able to see the proper name in order to call on you. You should be able to log out and log back in, and it should prompt you for your name when you log into Zoom to the webinar. So, try that. You should be able to rename yourself using that if you can't see it in the attendee list.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. Hello, distinguished commissioners, Madam Chairwoman. Thank you for your great work to date and for providing this forum for comment. I'm Nicholas Cody. I'm representing Verity Scientific LLC and the brand April Cannabis. We will be competing for a micro business class 1 cultivation license in New Jersey, hopefully later this year. We have a couple of comments and about as many questions, so we'll start with some comments. Subsection F2B on page 63 of the statute defining a micro business states that at least 51% of the owners, directors, officers, or employees shall reside in the municipalities in which the center is located. The word "or" would suggest that the owners and directors of the company may live anywhere in the state, so long as the aggregate of all those involved is at least 51% local. Given the highly specialized nature of what a cultivation center does, we strongly encourage the rules and regs to exempt owners from this requirement. It will be extremely difficult, if not impossible, given the nature of the requirements of the site, to find a site that is adequate in or near the town in which I live. So that would loosen up and give us more options in terms of where we can look for real estate in the state. A couple of questions. Does the Does the commission intend to stipulate a time limit following approval licensure for a cannabis cultivation city to be operational? A facility such as the one we have planned requires significant planning, design, and construction. An immediate or quick move into operations will be difficult or impossible to accomplish. And such a rule would also decrease the quality of cultivation facilities across the state. And that's all I have for you today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cody.
Madam Chairwoman, Mr. Cody, would you be able to submit your comments in writing, please?
Absolutely will do, Commissioner Barker. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just a note, if anybody has to log out and log back in to change their name, and just raise your hand. If your name was already called, if you raise your hand, you will not lose your place in the queue. The next 5 up are Charles Gormley, Michael Terranova, Dishan Patel, Albert Nelson, Kevin Sluka. That's Charles Gormley, Michael Terranova, Dishan Patel, Albert Nelson, and Kevin Sluka. First up is Dishan Patel. I will give you permission to speak, unmute yourself, and you can go ahead.
Good evening, members of the CRC, and thank you for being so commercial and allowing me to speak. I'll be quite brief, and apologies in advance if any of these points are not on today's topic list. My name is Dishan Patel, CEO and co-founder of Nala Luna LLC, which is a 100% minority-owned entity, a retail dispensary prospect and franchisee of Unity Road, which is a nationwide dispensary franchisor. We believe in locally owned and operated cannabis dispensary operations, and we have a strong focus in education, both for new and existing users. And, you know, coming from an immigrant minority family and raised in New Jersey for all my life and being just super close to my local community, I'm very focused on, you know, the state's efforts and local efforts on proper education of the cannabis plant. So my more question / consideration for the CRC is, does the state have any plans on curating or sponsoring any campaigns, statewide education programs for cannabis users? Kind of like a campaign as we start rolling out the dispensaries and the presence of cannabis in the state. Of course, we will do this locally in our own communities, but perhaps a statewide reach may prove to be beneficial, especially at the beginning. So that was just kind of a point, you know, as we are hopefully close to rolling out applications, something for the CRC to think about. I'm sure you guys have already thought about that. My second point is it's a little off the topic of marketing and labeling, but I think I would suggest the CRC to take into consideration some sort of lead time between a cultivator and a retail operation, just to ensure that the supply meets the demand. And so retail dispensary owners like ourselves do not have to sit on a site for that long before obtaining the inventory necessary. And that's all I had. And one more quick question. One of the prior public speakers mentioned a statute or some public filings that were, I guess, publicly available. I was just wondering where do I find that to read? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Patel. The CREAM Act and the J. Koenig Law are both available on the CRC's website. There's a link on the homepage for anyone to read the language of those two laws. That is on the CRC's website at nj.gov/cannabis.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next up will be Michael Terranova. Mr. Terranova, unmute yourself and you can go ahead and speak.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today. My question is in regards to the dosing information on edibles and edible labeling. As we recognize the importance of potency in the labeling of edibles, is there any plan for the CRC to address the considerable number of people currently incarcerated for felony possession because their edibles were weighed by law enforcement based on the gross weight of the product rather than the potency? That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Terranova.
Next up, Kevin Sluka. Go ahead, Mr. Sluka.
Great, thank you for the opportunity. I'm with the Borough of Somerville and the Business Administrator. The municipality is in the process of, we've introduced 2 ordinances, one for the licensing requirements established by the municipality, and one, the land use requirements for the establishments to be located in. The planning board actually tomorrow night will hear the land use one, and the municipality is expected to adopt both ordinances in early next month. In particular, the borough is looking at a retail license, which would encompass 2 locations within the highway district that's located surrounding the borough. The questions have arisen at multiple meetings, in addition to potential licensees contacting the borough and residents and stakeholders' interest. The questions have arisen as to if the municipality wanted to increase it from 2 to 3 or 4 retail licenses after they've established the ordinance and after it's in place. Is that something that the CRC is assuming that that's doable? And the question arises, if we're currently allowing on the highway district, which borders the municipality, there's also concern, I shouldn't say concern, there's also thought that sometime in the future, the municipality may consider a more Main Street district. And I'm not sure, we have told people that's not our intent. Our intent is to keep it on the highway district for those potential licensees that really want to see what the market is. And the borough does not have any future intent on doing that. And also the other concern that has been raised to us from potential licensees is the ability to hold real estate. And I don't want to get into that because I heard another caller mention the same thing, so I don't want to tie you up any longer.
Mr. Sluka, about 10-15 seconds left.
Thank you, sir. Is the ability to hold real estate that's vacant in the process of getting the support letter and the zoning requirements from the municipality to where the CRC would be acting on licensing. Thank you for the opportunity today.
Thank you, Mr. Sluka. Yes, as noted before, with respect to municipal powers, the CRC as a regulatory agency can only implement the law. We cannot interpret the law or give legal advice to municipalities about their actions. So we would encourage you to speak with your municipal council for legal advice on municipal actions.
Thank you.
Last call for Albert Nelson or Charles Gormley, Esquire. Not seeing those names, we will go on to the next 5. Stephen Maynard, Kristen Haas, Rick Robinson, Mike Weinberger, Carlos Jaramillo. Stephen Maynard, Kristen Haas, Rick Robinson, Mike Weinberger, Carlos Jaramillo. And the first one up would be Kristen Haas from the Botanica Boutique. Go ahead and unmute yourself and speak.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
We can hear you.
We can? Okay. Hi, good evening, Madam Chairwoman and Commissioners, and thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Kristen Haas, and I'm the founder and owner of the Botanica Boutique in Maplewood, New Jersey. I'm a former New Jersey public.
Ms. Haas, sorry
yes.
to interrupt.
Sure.
Can you just spell your name for the record, please?
Sure. Kristen, and my last name is Haas.
Thank you very much.
I may have registered under Chris Haas, or that might be what's on my profile right now. Okay.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. No problem. I'm a former New Jersey public school teacher, and I'm the executive director of the Maplewood Chamber of Commerce. My online business offers high quality cannabis products and cannabis education to my consumers. I want to thank Nina Parks for bringing up micro businesses and the concerns around packaging and equity. This is something that I wanted to bring up tonight. As a micro business myself, this has been like one of many of my concerns entering into this new wonderful industry that our state is building, along with some similar topics. I'd like to ask the commission to please remember micro businesses when making mandates around things like packaging. As a parent-friendly company planning to serve Northern New Jersey, child-proof packaging on cannabis products is very important to me. Another important branch of my business is to educate consumers. Using QR codes, as someone brought up earlier, is a great and cost-effective way for products to link to lab tests, ingredients, and other important information. And it's also something that can be updated easily, and if you use the same QR code cheaply. When the opportunity becomes available, I would like to apply for a micro business license for a cannabis delivery service that educates consumers on what products will work best for them and offers a seamless, discreet product delivery. My intention is to provide each consumer with a resealable and reusable child-proof bag. A similar one was actually pictured during one of the presentations. And the idea behind this is that consumers can keep all of their products or maybe even just their edibles in this bag to increase the safety around cannabis in homes with children. Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak, and I hope to participate more in the New Jersey Cannabis Dialogue in the future.
Thank you, Ms. Haas.
Thank you.
Next up is Carlos, I assume it's Jaramillo. Mr. Jaramillo, please spell your full name after you begin to speak.
Hi, good afternoon, good evening. It's Carlos, Jaramillo. It's pronounced Aramillo. Good evening, board members, Madam Lead. Great job in keeping up with what we're trying to do here in New Jersey. So just a little bit background about who I am. I've been listening to this call since inception, just because I'm a licensed producer in an international jurisdiction and also a New Jersey resident. And I had to run from New Jersey to get licensed in another jurisdiction because I knew how important this industry would be for my family, friends, and I'm also a healthcare provider and also my patients. So I know tonight's topic was about packaging and labeling, etc. But one of the things that keeps driving me back to be a part of the exciting nascent industry in New Jersey is the focus that New Jersey is putting on these micro businesses. And I think I may have sent over a comment sheet or something about where we are as micro businesses and how large corporations, especially now licensed in the medical space in New Jersey, can help these micro businesses. In this industry, we hear all the time about vertical integration. I prefer horizontal integration because you cannot have grassroots people suffering for so long, locked up in disenfranchised communities and still suffering while the big corporations are getting ahead and getting ahead really fast too, because they have the deep pockets to do so. And again, I could speak from both variants and different handles because I was in corporate and I'm also a grassroots person, and I also know how the industry works from an international point of view. So what I would suggest, the commission does is in seeking and to interest and to grab, grassroots individuals, which we're targeting as a micro business licenses, is to involve these people from the get-go, involve communities, involve groups that have teamed up to create a sense of urgency to target the market, to create urban farming. Like that's one of the topics I would love to, expand on: urban farming for urban dispensaries and for urban development. Then we could talk about how we're going to help these disenfranchised groups, because if the activity in the community is working, we're hiring people in the communities, we're building places for people to see in the communities, and we're developing these communities slowly, but with the resources that was done, the work was done by the individuals in these communities which can be, packaging and label could come from a community in Patterson, a community in Trenton, a community in Newark. But we have to say to these groups, which
Mr. Chair,
are,
about 15 seconds left here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. So what we should focus on, to help these micro businesses in all facets, labeling, packaging, everything, is to create an urban sense of need. Because once this thing goes legal, our urban communities will suffer, and the grassroots people at these levels that's taking care of their families will suffer. And then we're talking about something else that we did not want. So, a keen focus or a subsector group within the CRC would be really helpful in moving forward and helping us all. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate the comments.
Thank you, Mr. Aramillo.
Madam Chairwoman, if I may, Ms. Amarillo, if it's all right with you, please feel free to submit your comments and any supplemental material to the CRC for review.
I sure will, Mr. Baker, and I must applaud you and your interest in pushing that micro business approach very well, Commissioner Baker. Thank you.
Not seeing Stephen Maynard, Rick Robinson, or Mike Weinberger. The next 5 up are Travis Alley, Alexandra Staropoli, John Henry Barr, Chirali Patel, and Chong Ho Lee. Travis Alley, Alexandra Staropoli, John Henry Barr, Chirali Patel, and Chong Ho Lee. First up is Mr. Maynard. Mr. Maynard, you may unmute yourself and go ahead. Mr. Maynard? You're still muted. Mr. Maynard has disappeared. I will call those names again. Travis Alley, Alexandra Staropoli, John Henry Barr, Chirali Patel, and Chong Ho Lee. Travis Alley is here. Go ahead and unmute yourself and you may speak.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Travis Alley. I'm the founder of 93ID. We're applicant from the 2019 RFA process. One of about 146 companies that have been waiting and waiting. And I just hope that Mr. Brown's statement at the start of this is pretty accurate, because it's been a really long wait, and collectively we spent tens of millions of dollars holding on to real estate. And I feel like a lot of these discussions are out of place. We should be focused on resolving that. Furthermore, as you guys come up with your next round of licenses, I hope you've considered the losers from the 2019 process. The deluge of lawsuits that will come if they're skipped, or if we or they are skipped over for new applicants, is going to grind the whole system to a halt. And the final thing I want to say is the CRC needs to do a better job of communicating. You guys solicited a lot of comments. I personally have submitted dozens of emails. I filled out a form on your website, which you guys just promoted, to request meetings. I get zero response, not even an automated response. Regarding the micro licenses, we have formed a new company. We have formed a new company called Budbox Farms. We wanted to share with you guys and have a meeting to see if there's some alignment there, to see if us and what we're offering will actually help, because I don't think that's going to work either unless something like Budbox Farms exists. But we can't even get any audience, but yet others can get invited to the meeting. I find it odd and frankly a little bit insulting that we can't even get a email or invite answered, yet others can. So I just hope that the communication with the CRC in the future improves, and that as you come out with your next round of licenses, you really think about the impact of what will occur if 2019 losers are not considered. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Alley.
Not seeing Alexandra Staropoli, John Henry Barr, Shirali Patel, or Chanko Lee. We will go ahead and move to the next 5. Daniel Lochard, Kevin John, Amy Catalia, Charles Johnson Esquire, and Mark Libeskind. So sorry. Mark Libeskind, Daniel Lochard, Kevin John, Amy Catalia, and Charles Johnson. Not seeing any of those people either. Going to move to the next 5. Riva Foster, Eric Jiang, Will Riviera, Zachary Katzen, Alan O. Or any, I see Zach Katzen. Go ahead, Mr. Katzen, unmute yourself and you can proceed.
Hello, thank you for hearing me today. My name is Zach Katzen from the Atlantic City Cannabis Advisory Committee to the mayor. Wanted to talk today about the packaging and advertising. I think it's important that we remember we do not have to reinvent the wheel here. A lot of this has been litigated and done through alcohol, advertising, and direction. The industry and the framework exists there. We are talking about cannabis. We're talking about a brand new industry. And most of the times when you have a brand new industry lifting up from the ground, you have incentives and tax abatements and things like that. The state is actually imposing regulations and financial burdens. So this is an industry that is going to come up regardless of all that. So there's no need to attach extra and unnecessary burdens to that. And I think that goes right along with the packaging requirements. Most of the alcohol advertising and packaging requirements are voluntary, and they all usually are all compiled with. I think we can do the same thing as far as cannabis. We're seeing in Seattle Hemp Fest has a lawsuit right now. I think they just won a lawsuit against the state of Washington in regards to restrictive advertising procedures. There are a lot of lawsuits in other states because of the First Amendment and the great depth it gives us in what we can say and do. I don't think it's prudent for New Jersey to create restrictions that will result in lawsuits when we can spend that money better on education. We can spend that money on education. We can spend that money speaking directly, having programs created specifically for the youth to address this issue. Obviously, the marketing is going to be intended to provide just for adult consumers. Those in the ads should all be adults. It should be targeted at adults and should always be marketed as responsible consumption. We don't think that there really needs to be that much more in regards to it. We know that they're not going to target children. I mean, we're in an industry that has so much regulation and so much oversight that these companies are not going to then go try to run wild and target, just like the alcohol companies don't. We don't have a lot of issues in the alcohol industry with marketing towards children anymore. And I don't think you're going to find that in the cannabis industry because the applicants and the people respect this marketplace and they are very worrisome and understanding of the burdens that are on them already. That's it in regards to cannabis packaging. Wanted to state again and ask that the CRC does come to Atlantic City.
Just 10 seconds, thank you.
Okay, we do ask that the commission does come and meet with us in Atlantic City. Atlantic City is a very special place that has regulations that don't exist anywhere else in the state and cutouts that don't exist anywhere else in the state, 16,000 hotel rooms. We need to have special provisions in place for Atlantic City to operate and provide the most tax revenue and the best service to the people of our state. So we ask again, as I have for the past two previous meetings that we can set a meeting with the CRC to come speak with Atlantic City officials and talk about how we can create the best marketplace for the state. Thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Katzen.
Next speaker up will be Alan Al. Mr.
Hi.
Al, unmute yourself and go ahead.
You can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, perfect. Hi all. So my name is Dr. Alan Au, A-L-A-N. Last name is A-O. I'm a registered pharmacist, lifelong New Jersey native. I've been working in the cannabis industry for the past 3 years in New Jersey, serving as vice president and clinical pharmacist in one of New Jersey's currently operating ATCs, as well as the founder of a cannabis consulting firm called Plants and Prescriptions, where I help medical patients using cannabis, as well as industry dispensaries that are starting up. Thank you to the New Jersey Cannabis Regulatory Commission for opening another dialogue to the public about some important safety topics that will shape the future of the legalized industry within New Jersey. I just wanted to share some tidbits that I have from working in the traditional pharmaceutical world about packaging and labeling. For consumers who may or may not be using these cannabis products for medical purposes, the resounding issue, like many have already stated, is to revolve around standardization of packaging and being able to verify authenticity of a legal regulated product. For ingestible dosage forms like edibles or tinctures, I think cannabis products should contain a standardized format for nutrition labels, similar to food labels mandated by the FDA. A precise way to display recommended serving size, caloric intake, nutrients, full list of ingredients that will provide transparency for people with dietary restrictions. In addition to that, common allergens should be highlighted, including but not limited to items like nuts, dairy, gluten, food dyes, etc. Prescription medication bottles contain a national drug code, or NDC, which serves as a unique and universal identifier of a single product type. These codes will, if we have these codes on medical cannabis or regular cannabis products, they'll ensure the same product being dispensed in Atlantic City is going to be the same one dispensed in Oakland, New Jersey. On the back end, having a central database with these unique identifiers will allow regulators to categorize and track these numbers for quality control measures like manufacturer contact info and dispensing data statistics. So if New Jersey wants to go one step further and be progressive in highlighting consumer confidence, I just wanted to add on to Dr. Nathan's comments earlier today about the quick response or QR codes on packaging. Some prescription drugs, like the controlled substance Suboxone to treat opioid addiction, contains individualized QR codes on their packaging. QR codes can be scanned to instantly provide information about a product, such as a COA, certificate of analysis, along with batch lot expiration information. Other features that may be useful to consumers would be links to videos demonstrating product consumption techniques and safety tips, internally contained advertising materials for processors, or surveys on reviews of the product at hand. And lastly, and most importantly, a QR code provides authenticity to steer away from illicit legacy market products which don't have regulatory control measures. QR code serves as verifiable link, again, unique to the specific product, that provides consumer confidence that they're purchasing a regulated product from a licensed manufacturer. Just wanted to share my thoughts as a pharmacist and as a personal applicant in the future for dispensary license. I just want to say you guys are doing a great job with the amount of burden that has been put on your shoulders and the patience that you're displaying with the rest of us. So thank you for that process.
Thank you, Dr. O.
There is, I guess he came off. I thought somebody else was here. Okay. Will Rivera was up listed under Scarlet Reserve, but I guess he's gone. If you come back, you can raise your hand. Or Reva Foster. The next 5 names: Dr. Monique Hamilton, Shelby Brown, Debbie Moran, R. Todd Edwards, and Sergio Borges. Again, Dr. Monique Hamilton, Shelby Brown, Debbie Moran, R. Todd Edwards, Sergio Borges. Please raise your hands if you are present.
Tony, and before you call the next person, I just want to emphasize again, we need to see who you are. So you need to be logged in by the name that you're signed up with. Otherwise, we have no way of knowing who's raised their hand. If you can't do that in Zoom, you can log back out. It should when you log in, it should ask for your name, or try to log in on a different device. And it should ask you to enter your name as an attendee. Again, we just need to know we need to know who signed up and be able to call on you. So go ahead, Tony.
Yeah, and if you log out and have to come back in, you will not lose your space. Just raise your hand and I will call on you. Debbie Moran, you are up next. Please unmute yourself and go ahead. Debbie Moran. Unmute yourself.
Yes, good evening. Thank you so much. My comments regard testing. I know how hard it is to be a regulator and always wonder if you're getting it right. There are always all kinds of experts, and there's an endless supply of advice. But there are really smart people out there too who are truly subject matter experts whose work is always subject to peer review. There are the ones regulators should be listening to very carefully. Let's face it, we all make mistakes from time to time, whether it's listening to the wrong advice or just not listening at all. The measure of a great regulator is one who admits mistaken decisions and correct them. When I was on the Maryland Commission, trying to create a new medical program that made sense, was workable for both industry and the public, we made many mistakes. The great news was there was always the commenting public to set us straight. When it came to setting up testing program, I wanted to create a program that would mimic the FDA or close to the FDA's programs. We wanted Maryland to be the new standard for the most part. We succeeded. But the science and technology doesn't stand still, so regulations and guidances about testing will always be a work in progress. We have been talking about total yeast and mold in cannabis flower for way too long. By we, I mean everybody from the equipment manufacturers, the labs, the licensees, and of course the regulators. We need to put this test in some perspective. Most species of fungus are non-pathogenic to humans, other than those that are immune compromised, and pose no health risk other than a quality appearance issue. On the other hand, there are very dangerous pathogenic species, like some species of Aspergillus, that can cause severe illness or even death. Those species absolutely need to be tested for and conform to rigid specifications by the most accurate, precise, reproducible methodologies available. To quote a very brilliant scientist and expert, plating was the gold standard, ... 50 years ago. I would now like to strongly encourage the CRC and the Commission to take a good scientific look at the best way to assure products are safe, free from true pathogenic microorganisms, and not worry too much about, quote, a little moldy bread. For example, California has revised their microbiological testing requirements to only specify human pathogens associated with cannabis use. Specifically, these are Shiga toxin producing E. coli and 4 species of Salmonella. Preserving total yeast and mold and total or row recount as a quality test for gross contamination is a reasonable idea. Other states are now considering these changes. The Cannabis Advisory Group thanks you for your time and consideration of these important testing issues so that we can create the best cannabis testing program in the US. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moran. And if you do submit written comments, please make sure that you specify some of the technical pieces that you've identified here. I know the commissioners are trying to take notes, so we want to make sure that we are capturing information accurately.
I shall. Thank you for that.
Next up will be Will Rivera. Will, unmute yourself and you may proceed.
How you doing? My name is William Rivera. I'm calling from Scarlet Reserve. We're a CBD dispensary and licensed New Jersey hemp processor. I just want to give a little background for what is going on as far as what's in New Jersey as far as the towns opting out. Last week, I believe Reddington opted out. That is where we are a New Jersey licensed processor at. I believe the mayor didn't even know that the CRC had a board assembled yet. So at the end of the meeting, we tried to educate them and give them some more information that it was available, that there's stuff that they can go see and download to try to give them a little bit of education. To no avail. They basically opted out. So we basically have a spot that we were trying to get a micro cultivation license for, sitting in limbo, paying rent on something that we really can't afford right now. With them opting out, we're trying to get out of that situation now, but now we have to break a lease, waste more money trying to get a new space. And just to come to find out that where our dispensary is doing very well in Saraville just opted out. So again, now, we're a small business. We're doing all this. We bootstrap the whole thing. It's very, very costly. So it's getting to a point where we don't know what to do anymore. Our CBD business is doing well, but would we be able to use that CBD dispensary and our business as an application for the retail dispensary? That's one of the questions that I have for you. Another question is, what is going to happen with, I believe there was a caller with these micro licenses that, they go from all, they're applying for vertically integrated licensings with multi-million dollars, and then all of a sudden now they're applying for micro licensing. How is that going to, get weeded out for the small businesses like myself and other businesses that are trying to get in, that we cannot compete with the big money? My CBD dispensary does okay, but that's only because we have a ton of products from other companies all over the country. It's very hard to sell. And if you're competing with these big companies, it's very difficult. So what will the CRC do to basically stop bigger companies from breaking up to try to form little micro businesses and knocking us out of the picture? Also, with all that being said, with the towns that are, opting out, there is a town, Red Bank, who is opting in with regulations, who is doing their due diligence and is allowing us and at least giving us a conversation to come in there. What can we do to basically help them come up to speed with the regulations? When the regulations come out, they are basically blocking all the streets. So there's maybe one or two streets in the whole town that is allowing these businesses.
Rivera,
So
about
now,
15 seconds. Thank you.
okay, thank you for your time. So we're allowing this, these street, there's only going to be a couple streets. So we're going to be in competition with the big guys again. I just, will there be any clarification on price, licensing and as far as stuff like that? Because, we can't compete with the big guys. We're trying to do it now. We're getting drowned out. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Rivera, for your comments this evening.
The next speaker up would be Dr. Monique Hamilton. Dr. Hamilton.
Hello, I am Dr. Monique Hamilton, and I am the lead physician for the Dr. Monihami Medical Center, DMMC, in South Orange, New Jersey. Visit us at drmonihami.com. I am registered with the New Jersey Medical Marijuana Program, and I provide patients with medical marijuana certs for the management of qualifying conditions, in addition to lifestyle mods to change lifestyle habits. This includes food, exercises, and integrative health and wellness services such as massage, yoga, acupuncture, and others. The DMMC will be a vendor at the Atlantic City Veg Fest this Saturday, July 17th, from 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. Come check us out at the Yellow Tent. We are going to be jamming and partying. This is the largest vegan festival in New Jersey, and the DMMC will be providing information about medical marijuana certs and lifestyle mods. Visit theveganlocal.com for tickets. I believe it is important that the packaging and labeling of cannabis and cannabis products should be standardized and include the strain of cannabis by percentage. For example, a predominantly sativa product would be sativa 65%. The concentration of THC and CBD in the product, weight of the product, a contaminant testing statement, which would require a generic statement of compliance with mandatory contaminant testing on all cannabis product labels, a warning statement, which would require a standard warning statement on cannabis products based on a type of product. And for ingestible infused products, there should include an ingredients list, allergen labeling, and nutrition facts. Correct and standardized labeling will ensure that patients and consumers are provided products of the same standards and helps patients and consumers decide which product may help suit their needs. It is important to maintain a bona fide doctor-patient relationship to ensure the patient is consuming products that are appropriate for the condition it is intended to treat. This requires the doctor to follow up with the patient regularly to ensure the patient experiences no unwanted side effects, no adverse interactions with other medications, and the desired treatment response. This includes 4 visits annually, and ideally, one of those visits in person at minimum. Thank you.
Shelby Brown, R. Todd Edwards, Sergio Borbas. Not seeing any of those individuals. I will move on to the next 5. Diego Arias, Bill McKee Jr., Sean McGarr, Kevin McKernan, Cheryl Murray Powell. That is Diego Arias, Bill McKee, Sean McGarr, Kevin McKernan, and Cheryl Murray Powell. For any of those individuals present, Kevin McKernan will be the next speaker. Mr. McKernan, unmute yourself and you can go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me? All right, well, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate everyone hearing us out here. I want to be speaking about testing, and we'll reiterate some of the comments that an earlier speaker had just stated. Just a little background, I've got 26 years in the genomics and microbiology space. I used to manage the research and development team for the Human Genome Project under Eric Lander. You may know his name. He's currently working in the cabinet with President Biden. This is at the Whitehead Institute at MIT. For the Center for Genome Research. I have over 41,000 citations in the field, and I'm one of the most highly cited scientists in cannabis microbiologicals. We've got microbial detection tools that are currently in 150 labs currently trying to address this problem. So I want to just declare that conflict very clearly here. But we have been doing this longer than anybody in the field since about 2015, which is by no means a long time, but it's very long for the cannabis field. I want to hope and encourage the state of New Jersey to avoid some of the pitfalls that we're seeing in other states. There is a lot of testing discordance in other states, and that different methods get used. They're not methods that necessarily are very good for detecting the pathogenic microbes that a previous speaker had already brought up. And as a result of this, you get a lot of lab fights, a lot of stories in the press about the dangers of the cannabis market. And this brings a lot of I'd say bad reputation, if you will, to some of the regulators as well, which this is not their fault. This is a fault of old testing standards not being appropriately fit. So I'd like to reiterate that I think these total yeast and mold and total aerobic counts that are being done with plating are very ancient techniques, and they do not address the pathogens that we know exist in cannabis. The most dangerous one is Aspergillus. This is an endophyte. This is what lives inside of the plant. You cannot get this out of the plant by plating it. You have to lyse open cells to get this thing out of the plant. And once you do that, nothing's viable and doesn't grow on these plates. So you don't get a very good survey of the plant if you resort to this plating method. This is the only, really, if you look at the clinical literature for deaths in cannabis, they're associated with Aspergillus. Aspergillosis in immunocompromised patients. There's several deaths that are reported in the literature. And that's the one we really got to keep our eye on. So we encourage to follow California's lead here, which is to use molecular techniques that can properly quantitate this, and to use the similar thing to go after E. coli and Salmonella. The other issue with plating is it doesn't scale very well. It leads to a lot of lab fights and a lot of these public false alarms. And it's also something that we have seen I'd say, it's lost favors of what you're seeing going on currently with COVID testing. COVID testing is specifically not plating the virus on viral cells because that replicates human pathogens in the hands of labs. And eventually those human pathogens end up infecting the lab members, and sometimes it ends up leaking out of the laboratories. So we do not want to be encouraging the replication and growing and culturing of pathogenic microbes in hundreds of labs all over the country. We would prefer we use methods that replicate the DNA, which is non-viable and non-infective. That is what we are seeing the FDA move toward. with their culture.
Mr. McKernan, about 10, 15 seconds. Thank you.
I'll yield my time. I just want to just thank you for your time here, and let's keep an eye on where the FDA and the CDC are going. And it's all been displayed in this current COVID pandemic where everyone is using PCR. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McKernan.
Madam Chairwoman, if I may, Mr. McKernan, thank you. If you may, please feel free to submit written comment on the points that you made and any supplemental materials or publications that you worked on that would elaborate on that.
Next speaker up is Bill McKee. Go ahead.
Hello, Bill McKee Jr., Boonton Township, New Jersey. There's some regulations that I feel that you need to write. I have a pop factory in my town, and I needed to be state that the noise, odor, and light pollution that comes out of it there, as far as the noise and odor, it should be limited and it should not come off the property line. The light pollution from the grow lights should be contained inside the building and not shine outside to light up the night skies. I feel that there should be fines put in place if they do not do any of those, and the fines for allowing the odor or noise to come off the property line should be 2% of their revenue that they make per quarter per incident. I also feel that you should not give out licenses or permits to lobbyists because they have an unfair advantage over just the general public knowing politicians. I feel you should also ban any employees working for those facilities coming to municipal town meetings, just listening in, giving the marijuana companies intel as to what the public is thinking. If the marijuana companies have to come in for a, say, a site plan permit or any formal permit, you need to require the municipality to notify the public 1 month ahead of time, and also all forms of communication from emails to the website to the digital billboard out front to put the topic on there so that the public knows what's going to happen, so they have adequate notice. That's been a problem in my town as far as not notifying what's going on until it just happens all of a sudden. We have had the marijuana company just show up 3 hours before the meeting and say that they want to be at the meeting that night, and the public has no idea what's going on. I feel those kind of regulations would also help the New Jersey DEP as far as right now, the DEP cannot monitor the air because there's no regulation to say what it should be or should not be. It should be zero emissions coming off the property line, as well as anything coming out of smokestacks, whether it's from the HVAC or just the furnace itself, or actually the emissions. Those should all be eliminated. The residents should not have to put up with that there. And lastly, the
Mr.
delivery.
McKee, about 10, 15 seconds. Thank you.
Okay. Lastly, the deliveries that come in there as far as trucks and all like that should be limited to 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And I also feel employees should be limited to those times because we've noticed a drastic increase in traffic as far as nighttime and all like that. Neighbors do not want to see headlights shining into their house all night long. I can submit all those suggestions I have for regulations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. McKee.
Thank you.
Next speaker up is Cheryl Marie Powell, Esquire. Unmute you, go ahead.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thanks for hanging in there for such a long meeting. We appreciate your sacrifice. My name is Cheryl Marie Powell, Esquire. I am a cannabis, agricultural, and dietary supplement attorney. I've been practicing in the space for since 2016. and I've worked with municipalities all over this country on their marijuana as well as CBD legislation. In addition, I am the business development manager for CSI, or Creative Services, and we are a company that's been in the background screening industry for 45 years. We do equity verification, so I'm hearing a lot of talk about the micro businesses and how we're going to make sure it's the right businesses that benefit. That's exactly why we're here, is to make sure that happens. So we do equity verification. We do employment verification for license holders as well. And the reason why I'm here today is really just to talk about labeling and packaging. I just have a few very short points. Before I start, I do want to thank Chairwoman Hauno, and I apologize if I mispronounced your last name, for her presence at the City of Trenton Cannabis Night Live event. She was available to everyone who attended the event and made sure that everyone who attended the event knew about this commission meeting. So I just want to thank you for your generosity with your time and for supporting Minorities for Medical Marijuana, which was the organization hosting the event. I was their first general counsel for their first 3 years. Now, returning to labeling and packaging, I also am a member of ASTM, International Standards D37 Committee. I am the chairperson for their Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion work group. I'm also the chairperson for their Global Workshop work group. I want to echo the sentiment of Bob Morgan, who has been a fantastic advocate for our industry and sits on both of my work groups as support with regards to encouraging the CRC to adopt the ASTM standards with regards to labeling and packaging. And as he identified, we are looking at separating those standards out. And also the universal symbol, which was shown on the screen very early in this call. A lot of work went into it, a lot of meetings, and we have consensus from members from around the world in numbers over 1,000 people participating and giving consensus. So that's the first piece I'd like to talk about. The second part is it has to do with sustainability. I haven't heard much of that today, but when we're talking about packaging, if there's any way in the standards to encourage sustainable practices and the reduction/elimination of waste with regards to cannabis packaging, that is something we would definitely like to see as an industry. And then third is just a highlight of a recent issue in Michigan. It's borderline packaging related with regards to them having to suspend a license holder because of human saliva being used for the sealing of pre-rolls and things like that. So it's just something to keep in mind if you want to look at the communication by the MRC, the Michigan Regulatory.
Ms. Murray Powell, about 10 seconds. Thank you.
Oh, I was just closing up. Perfect. If you want to look at that case on their website where they suspended, they put the notice out yesterday and get some best practices as to how to avoid that type of issue with regards to pre-roll packaging and related items. So thank you again for your work and your tenacity in hanging in with us this late at night. And please consider me to be a resource.
Thank you very much, Ms. Powell.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Not seeing Diego Arias or Sean McGar. We're going to call the next 6 registrants: Kristen Goad, Tara Sargenti, Chi Bravo, Kevin O'Leary, Leo Bridgewater, and Robert Allen. That's Kristen Goad, Tara Sargenti, Chi Bravo, Kevin O'Leary, Leo Bridgewater, and Robert Allen. Kristen Goad will be the next speaker.
Hi, thank you for taking the time to listen to my comment and to hold these regular meetings. I'm Kristen Goade, founder of Tricom Analytical, a DEA registered and ISO 17025 accredited cannabis testing laboratory in Mount Laurel, New Jersey, that has been servicing the hemp industry for the past year with USDA pre-harvest compliance testing, as well as CBD consumer product safety testing. I wanted to comment on the topic of labeling as it pertains to cannabinoid potency labeling accuracy and compliance testing transparency. So regarding cannabinoid labeling accuracy, obviously the concentration of cannabinoids labeled on the product should closely reflect the amount measured on the final compliance test to ensure accurate dosing and expectation for the consumer. However, slight variability in cannabinoid concentration is to be expected between production batches. For example, a gummy labeled at 20 milligrams may test at 19 or 21 milligrams. But the important question to consider is, when does the measured concentration no longer represent the product is labeled, and how is that evaluated? So some states require labeling accuracy, but do not provide criteria on what is an acceptable variation. Other states have defined an extremely low acceptable variation across all dose levels. In some cases, this is even more stringent than the variation accepted between laboratories for the same product. For this reason, I strongly urge that the level of active cannabinoids per serving be taken into consideration when establishing the acceptable margin of error between the labeled amount and the measured amount. For example, a variation acceptance of 20% of the labeled amount for products with 25 milligrams per serving or less, and 10% for products with 25 milligrams or more per serving. And then regarding the compliance testing transparency, so David Nathan and Nina Parks already touched on this, but I think that it is worth repeating. So some programs, including the New York Cannabinoid Hemp Program, have enforced or are proposing QR code labeling requirements for all final products. This QR code links directly to the compliance certificate of analysis, adding increased traceability and transparency to the consumer. I personally think that this is a great idea, and I would like for the commission to consider similar labeling requirements. So thank you for your time, and we look forward to begin working within the high THC cannabis industry, hopefully very soon.
Thank you, Ms. Cody, for your comments this evening.
Next up is Kevin O'Leary. Please remember to raise your hand when you hear your name so that you're easy to identify.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, it's Kevin O'Leary. I'm the Deputy Mayor of Lafayette, and I was really been on this since 4 o'clock, wondering, I guess you've tabled the Harmony application, and I had submitted a letter in support and wanted to make some public comments, but I don't know if it's appropriate now. This is the expansion of cultivation site to Lafayette, New Jersey. I've been on the phone with the applicant. They didn't know why it was tabled, and I didn't know why it was either. But if you want me to make those comments now or wait till the next meeting, it's up to you.
Yes, Mr. O'Leary, that agenda item was tabled, so that will be considered for future CRC meeting.
Okay, maybe would it be appropriate then to make those comments at that time, or should I make them now and they're preserved for whenever that gets considered?
The commission will provide the public opportunity to provide comments on agenda items. So I'll leave it to you to decide whether you wish to use this time to speak, or wait until that item is back on the commission's agenda to speak then.
You know what, let me go ahead and make my comments on it, and maybe they can be preserved then, and they'll be in the minutes, I guess, for your next meeting. I just want to mention I am the Deputy Mayor of Lafayette, but have also been involved in the process of granting Harmony Foundation local approvals. I have been involved with Harmony since they first approached Lafayette with the concept to grow medicinal cannabis. I've also authored our cannabis opt-out ordinance, which in our case is really an opt-in for categories 1 through 4 licenses in our light industrial zone. I was also just introduced, I just actually also introduced the second ordinance that will establish our local tax on product grown and processed at this site. And I only mention this to make the point that locally, everything in Lafayette needs to be done to start development of the site is completed. I should mention that the selection of this site predates our recent recreational use approval, the state's recreational approval. The concept with Harmony began as a medicinal cannabis grow site, but the Township Committee and the Land Use Board has recognized during the process that the likelihood the referendum would pass, and all approvals allowing for cultivation of recreational cannabis as well as medicinal would be something that could take place at this site, and all those approvals for both medicinal and or recreational have been granted by Lafayette Township. I should mention Harmony was one of the most professional entities to appear before a land use board, and I've been a member of that board for 17 years. I hope you have the letter that we submitted to the commissioners dated July 6th supporting this operation. And I just want to raise a couple of quick points in this public session, well, eventually when you do hear their application. Harmony has developed the concept to operate a large facility in Lafayette dating back to 2019. They are one of the first medicinal cannabis licensees in the state and are probably way ahead of the curve as far as identifying what needs to be done to start operations. Lafayette residents' public opinion initially during the application process was, as you might expect, kind of hesitant, but their presentation was very professional, answering all questions concerning things such as security, noise issues, fencing, odor. All the different issues have been addressed satisfactorily to the local officials as far as moving this site forward. Let's see. The site location, just so you know, is on 144 Route 94 and is ideal for a large-scale cannabis facility. It is located on State Highway 94 on a large 100+ acre tract. It is only 3 miles from the Augusta State Police Barracks, and Harmony has been very proactive in discussing their operation or their proposed operation with the state police and also our local fire department. Just to give you a history of the lot, it was a research and development site for Shearing Plow Pharmaceutical Company that was eventually bought by Merck and closed as they had their own more modern research and development facility. It used to be the largest rateable in Lafayette. The site is in real need of redevelopment, and we're very
Mr. O'Leary, 10 seconds. Thank you.
Let's see, we also can support this because we just approved a 140 apartment unit in town that could actually house some of the new employees that we've been told may be as many as 300. So in closing, I understand the members of the agency will be coming to Lafayette to visit the site, and the Township Committee welcomes you and perhaps can be present to answer any questions you may have during your visit. Lafayette is looking forward to a continuing partnership with Harmony. It has been a pleasure to deal with them thus far as they have been transparent and professional, and hopefully this operation will bring hundreds of jobs to our town. And I do welcome any specific questions you may have, and likely will sit in when you do put this back on the agenda to see if you've got any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor.
Tara Sargenti will be the next speaker. Tara, unmute yourself and then you can go ahead. Tara?
Yes, can you hear me?
Can hear you now.
Fantastic. Chairwoman Waynu, Director Brown, members of the commission, thank you so much for taking the time to hear me. As many of you might know me as Tara Masu, I have been in the New Jersey legal cannabis industry for over a decade. I started the first edibles company in New Jersey back in 2009, Blazin' Bakery. I also serve on the board of the New Jersey Cannabis Association, the state's first and largest cannabis trade organization. And I was one of the lead consultants on the J. Koenig law, which is our medical marijuana legislation. What most people would probably not know is before my time in cannabis, also spent a decade in pharmaceutical labeling and marketing. So I have had products with a national retailer, Spencer Gifts, where I had to comply with FDA nutritional and packaging standards. So I have done design and marketing for Fortune 500 companies, and I feel like I would be uniquely suited to weigh in on this overlap. Dr. Nathan also reached out to me recently, and I absolutely support the symbol. I think that's great, and we need more standardization in the industry. So marketing is really important to entrepreneurs. When you walk into a liquor store, it's kind of like an adult candy store. You look at these wine labels and they're artistic and beautiful and they create emotion in someone. And when you compare that where someplace like Canada did to their cannabis industry, they completely removed all branding, all coloring, and it just sucked the soul right out of it. And to remember, these are 21 and over stores, where something like a liquor store, you can't even go into a dispensary without ID. In a liquor store, you could be a child and go buy a bag of potato chips. So these really are adult stores meant for adult experiences. And as we drift out of medical, we've had so much focus on eliminating pain in cannabis, the pain of people who are sick, the pain of people who are harmed by the drug war. Oh, and Madam Chair, thank you so much for the update on expungement. That is so great to hear. But so as people are leaving their jobs who are miserable and they're quite literally seeking a pursuit of happiness in cannabis, they're creating brands they're passionate about. And as we right the ship, I want us to think about also restoring joy in these products. So that's just one thing. Another thing, THC content does not change over time in processed products. Even by a year, we see very little variation. So one thing I want to mention is expiration dates. I know a lot of instances in New Jersey where edibles have had to be destroyed because of the quick expiration. And I think that's something we need to remedy because we don't have what a bakery has where it's fresh baked and brought out front. You know, we do have to have these processed products, which are more akin to a supermarket. So, and a standard in a supermarket would be about a year for expiration. So that's one thing. And then for extraction methods, I'm just trying to speed through this all. I'm happy to submit in writing as well. Is something I think should be left off the label is the extraction method. Butane is something that creates fear when people hear it's used, but it's allowable. Scientists, FDA, parts per million for many, many years. And if you Google butane in cereal, your first result will be Fruity Pebbles. It's a quick and affordable way, especially for equity applicants, to extract and make affordable products. But it does.
Ms. Argente, 10 seconds. Thank you.
You know what? I'm good. Thank you guys so much for hearing me. Yes, that's all.
Thank you very much, Ms. Argente.
Call for Robert Allen, Chi Bravo from the last batch. Robert Allen or Chi Bravo. Not hearing those, I am going to do last calls for Joshua Perez, David H. Carr, Kevin C. Underwalder, Gaetano Lardieri, Adrian R. Adams Jr., Nancy Erica Smith, Esquire, Louis Urieta, Curtis Howard, Matthew Boyle, Paul Josephson, Justin Pyatt, Brady Carter, Charles Gormley, Esquire, Albert Nelson, Stephen Maynard, Rick Robinson, Mike Weinberger, Alexandra Staropoli, John Henry Barr, Chirali Patel, Chung Ho Lee, Daniel Lochard, Kevin John, Ami Kachalia, Mark Libenskind, Riva Foster, Shelby Brown, R. Todd Edwards, Sergio Burgess, Diego Arias, Sean McAgar, Chi Bravo, Leo Bridgewater, Robert Allen. I see Chirali Patel here. She'll be the next person. She'll be
And
the next person.
just to know, again, you need to make sure that you're logged in under the name that you signed up on. The other names we're seeing right now are Al Millavois and Neil Mullen, neither of whom have signed up to speak. So if that's somebody who did sign up to speak, you were signed in on the wrong name, under the wrong name, and we have no idea who you are. So please sign in under your name so we can see who you are and that you've legitimately signed up to speak, and we can call on you. Thank you.
Chirali Patel, you may unmute yourself and go ahead.
Hi, can everyone hear me? Okay, thank you, Chairwoman Wainu, Executive Director, Commissioners, CRC, and I apologize for not being here earlier. I was at a public township meeting. Just going to keep it really quickly because it's about specific issues with packaging. I raised this at the prior meeting with the medical facilities. As a patient, I've been walking into one particular facility where they continue to have cartoon-like packaging on their products. Director Brown shared that there was a memorandum that was issued to stop those types of cartoonish, et cetera, packaging. For about 2 weeks, the ATC was compliant and it was all black packaging, and now they are back to their cartoon packaging. So I don't want to be one of those like tattletales, but it's a medical program and I'm a patient and I want my medicine to look like medicine, not recreational adult use products. And so that's one point. And then to the packaging, I wasn't sure if this involves the weights or the scales that are being utilized to package the products, but there is an ATC that is consistently 0.1, 0.2 below the 3.5 grams. And then there is an ATC that is consistently above. I'm not mad at the one that's consistently above, but the one that's consistently below, I think that's an error with, I don't know how they recalibrate their scales or their weight mechanisms, or if the CRC is going to be conducting audits, but I just wanted to raise that as a point to make sure that because it's medical products, they should be accurate. If it's 3.5 grams, that's exactly what you're getting, not more or less. And so that's just another issue that I wanted to raise. And that's really all for tonight. I know you guys have had a long night. Thank you.
Ms. Patel, if you don't mind, if you're comfortable with it, emailing myself about, the specific dispensaries, certainly if
Yes.
they're advertising something as 3.5 grams and it's not 3.5 grams, that's something we need to know about. And additionally on the labels as well, we do ask them to be compliant. So if there's one that's not compliant, and I think I have a good idea of who you're talking about, then that's info that we need to have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Patel. Yes, please make sure to connect with the commission staff regarding particular experiences. Ms. Blake, do we have any other speakers that have registered to speak tonight?
Nobody. There are a few people. I'm going to make it one more time. If you've heard your name and you still wish to speak, please raise your hand. Other than that, there are no other names that registered who are now with hands raised. No pre-registered names are left that were not called.
Thank you, Ms. Blake. And thank you to everyone who did speak for your input this evening. Before we adjourn today's meeting, I would like to provide an opportunity for the commissioners to provide some of their overall thoughts and any closing remarks. Commissioner Nash, please go ahead.
Thank you for joining us today. I would also like to thank today's guest speakers for sharing their experience and ideas regarding packaging and labeling. Child-proof packaging, ingredients, and dosing information is necessary for the safety of consumers. I want to also acknowledge the individual who shared earlier that he was able to successfully transition from opioids to marijuana. A 2020 peer-reviewed research study shows a correlation between higher medical and recreational storefront dispensaries is associated with reduced opioid deaths, particularly fentanyl-related deaths. For this reason alone, the Commission will work to ensure an adequate supply of product is available to medical marijuana patients. Thank you again.
Thank you, Commissioner Nash. Any other commissioners wish to offer closing remarks? Commissioner Delcy-Caruso?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just to piggyback on Commissioner Nash points, when we talk about packaging, labeling, or any advertisement of cannabis products, I think about public health and consumer safety, as many of you highlighted tonight. And we don't have the answers. We don't have all the answers. So your feedback, like Chair Waino mentioned before, will help us craft the regulations, but also will help us ensure that we establish the safeguards that helps to promote the creation of safe products for patients and adult use consumers. which is one of the CRC's core issues. So I really do value the feedback, and I know that the CRC will continue to have these discussions, not only on this topic, but on others to come. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Commissioner Nelson. Vice Chair Delgado.
Thank you very much, Chairwoman Wainu. Yeah, I was taken, I think what the voice from the audience that I heard the most this evening was communications. I think that stakeholder was absolutely right. I think we do need to do a better job in communicating to our public. I think it's evolving, we're getting better, but in my opinion, we can never communicate too much. So I think we will try harder. We will work internally to come up with strategies to do that. And I look forward to that challenge. So yes, we will communicate better in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioner Barker, anything you'd like to offer in closing remarks?
Not much. I echo the sentiments of my fellow commissioners. Very thankful that the public has continued to be involved in this process. We continue to receive great guidance. We continue to receive insights, constructive criticisms, and concerns that you rightly have. And so that has all been very helpful for us in terms of our understanding of our roles and responsibilities and meeting the goals and expectations that you as a public have of us. So thank you very much. Continue to stay with us, continue to join the meetings, and we hope to make you proud as we continue to develop the CRC and the cannabis industry.
Thank you, Commissioner Barker. Very quickly, yes, I, like Commissioner Del Cid, immediately think about public health, public safety, and patients when I think of packaging and labeling. I believe we need to make sure that the industry is responsible and provides products that are quality controlled, that cannot be easily accessible to children, and are right for patients as well. With respect to packaging, we saw from Dr. Calello the deceptive practices that some nefarious characters are using. And we've also seen other imagery, cartoon imagery being used on products. I believe we have a photo to share. Yes, that's the one. So this is the kind of behavior and practices that should not be tolerated, right? Using imagery from a well-known children's film is unacceptable. And so, you know, I believe we have like another one where there's a ice cream. There we go. Thank you. As you can see, this is an image of New York City, the New York City skyline with a ice cream sundae in the background. And so we really want to make sure that we are laying the foundation for a responsible industry here in New Jersey. Because if we have actors that insist on being deceptive and skirting the rules, then there will be consequences. It is imperative that public safety and public health are prioritized as we move forward here. And so I look forward to ensuring that the Commission's rules with respect to packaging and labeling requirements, as well as advertising, are strict, and they leave no room for knucklehead behavior, as our dear governor likes to say. So with that, I thank all of our speakers tonight, our invited guests. Thank you for the wonderful expertise that you have shared with us. For those who shared their personal experiences, thank you for your courage in sharing those experiences publicly with us. The commissioners we take copious notes during all of these meetings, and be sure that your ideas are taken to heart as we continue to develop these regulations. And I look forward to continuing to work with the public as we move forward and setting up a responsible cannabis industry. So with that, that concludes the business that we have for today. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Madam Chairwoman.
So moved.
Second.
All right, moved by Commissioner Barker, seconded by Commissioner Del Coso. All those in favor of adjourning say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? The ayes have it and the motion is carried. Thank you all again for joining the CRC's 5th public meeting. Please visit our website to learn more and to keep up with our approved calendar of meetings. Our meetings will be conducted, they'll continue to be conducted virtually until further notice. And with the time being 8:23, we are now adjourned, and I hope everyone has a great evening. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.